let's talk about the critical date list and what is curable in the contract.
Okay, so we have all kinds of potential breaches in the contract that could happen where we're going to need a cure. So what would be the items that we would be curing for? If we look at the critical date list, what are the items?
All right. The very first one is the buyer to deposit earnest money with the escrow company.
Okay, and the next one would be buyer to provide lender with loan application within 3 days after contract acceptance.
Buyer to grant lender permission to access credit report within 3 days after contract acceptance.
Seller to deliver SPUDs within 3 days after contract acceptance.
Seller to deliver insurance claims history within 5 days after contract acceptance.
Seller to notify HOA of pending sale if over 50 units 5 days after contract acceptance.
Buyer to receive required HOA disclosures, so 10 days after contract acceptance if less than 50 units, or 10 days after HOA's receipt if 50 or more units. So who gets cured in that?
That's going to be the seller's going to get cured on that if that's not delivered.
Not the title company, right?
Not the title company.
Okay.
Right. They could do it both, right? They're going to send it to the title company and to the seller, right? So we want to make sure that you're always sending every cure to the title company, copy them on all the cures.
Right.
Okay. So the next one's going to be buyer to supply LSU within 10 days after contract acceptance.
Buyer to provide lender with notice of intent to proceed with loan within 10 days of receipt of LE, which is the loan estimate.
Buyer to provide lender all requested signed documents and documentation listed in LSU as lines 32 to 35 within 10 days of receipt of LE.
Loan estimate.
Loan estimate. Very good.
Buyer to sign loan documents no later than 3 days prior to close of escrow. Or
buyer to deliver notice of loan approval without PTD prior to doc conditions and dates of CD receipt from lender no later than 3 days prior to close of escrow.
Or buyer to deliver notice of inability to obtain loan approval without prior to doc conditions no later than 3 days prior to close of escrow.
Buyer to have funds in escrow to allow COE on COE date.
Seller to complete repairs, if any, and delivered the receipts to the buyer 3 days prior to close of escrow.
This one's in bold. This one states recordation of documents. I don't think we've ever seen a cure notice for failed to record documents.
I wonder why you would do that.
Well, they didn't record the documents. So then they would put a cure notice in, right? Because they can't move in until we have recordation.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we don't give keys prior to it recording.
That's a great idea.
That'd be a good idea. Don't give the key that's in it. Yeah.
And the last one in the standard contract with no addenda attached is the seller to deliver possession, existing keys, security system alarms, mailboxes, etc. at close of escrow. Can you deliver a cure notice after close of escrow? And why would someone do that?
Okay, so we talked about this extensively. We have a lot of questions about this. A lot of stuff happens after close of escrow that we're not happy with, right? Mm-hmm. So the seller leaves property inside the house, leaves trash inside the house, or they forgot to repair items. And we have the question all the time, can we cure them after close of escrow, after the contract's already been done, right? So we no longer have a contract technically, I think, because we're closed.
So what if the seller's still in the house, they haven't moved out? Is that contractual that they can cure them after close?
I would say they can always cure it, right? I see it more used in litigation or for legal proceedings than I would really for contractual issues, because once they're closed, the title company can't undo it. You know, if you cure them for seller failed to move out, right? And they don't move out, the buyer can't cancel. They're going to have to go through the process because it's already closed, right?
Correct.
So now they're going to have to go through other processes there, which they could use that cure notice for that process. And I think that would be the benefit of that, would be to use that cure notice for, you know, other issues or what's going on. Who can sign a cure notice? That's always a question.
Oh, that is a good one. So is it only the buyer or seller, or can the agent sign it? Which we get that question quite a bit. So typically, it's best if the client is the one that signs the cure notice. But if the client is unavailable and they have told the agent, we need, I want to move this forward and I'm not available to sign, the agent can sign on their behalf and submit that document.
Okay, so I would agree with you there that the agent, it represents the client, and if for some reason, the client, we had one where the client was in China and just couldn't get it done in time. I think an email from the client would be very good, or a follow-up email from the agent to the client. As per our conversation, we'll continue with the cure notice and sign it. But yeah, I would agree with you there.
I think you touched on this earlier, but just expounding on the agent's responsibility to explain to the client what the cure notice is and help them understand, and whose decision is it to deliver that cure?
So this is an important question for any agent throughout anything in the contract, whether you're talking about counteroffers, addendums, writing the offer, is will the agent represent their client or represent themselves in the transaction? So as a broker, I see that's my number one thing. Don't represent yourself, represent your client. And a cure notice is crucial for that. You hear, like I said earlier, that you hear a lot of people say, agent, you need to get that cure notice over. And a lot of agents are just scared to do that. But you really need to talk to your client about submitting the cure notice. That's the crucial thing here, is that it comes from the client. Having that discussion with them, getting their okay to send it over. I don't agree with sending a cure notice over without having a conversation with your client about it. Even though it benefits your client, again, we're not advocating for our client. We're consulting our client and getting their thoughts and views and really educating them along the way of the process of what's going on. And that's one thing with a lot of agents in our industry need to do, is we need to make sure that the client's involved with the transaction, vested in the transaction, and knows what's going on.
While they're packing all their boxes
That's
and
right.
being stressed out. Right?
Yeah, while they're moving and in the trucks. And,
it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
No, but they should be paying attention. So absolutely.
Well, they want to be part of the transaction. As you see what's going on in our industry, clients like to be involved. They like to know what's going on with their deal other than just sitting back. I mean, you have some people out there, if you're looking at a disc, very high D, they're like, I'll just get it done. I don't want any part of it. Majority of people want to know what's going on and feel like they're included and making decisions in the transaction. And a cure notice is a great way to have them part of the transaction and making decisions about what to do. And then they understand what the problems are too.
A client has signed the cure period notice. What does the agent do with that document?
Well, it definitely needs to go out to all parties. You want to include the title company in everything that's going on with the notices. Anything that you do, addendums, contracts, issues through the escrow. So a cure notice should be sent to the other agent and title at the same time.
And should our agent copy themselves to prove that it was sent and delivered, or is their sent email enough?
Their sent email is enough when they send it, because when it comes to delivery in the contract, they just have to deliver it to the item. I prefer it when it comes to delivery is that they deliver it to the information that's on the last page, so on page 10 of the contract for that other agent. That way they can verify that they sent the correct information to what information that's on the contract.
Perfect. A lot of agents call and say, okay, the other party's in breach. Now what do I do? How do I notify people that we want to cancel? So what do agents need to do to cancel once the breach has happened, has been proven with the cure notice?
Also, the cure notice has already been presented. We're after our 3 days, and now the client says, you know what, they haven't cured it, we want to cancel, what do we do? So a lot of brokers have their own forms out there on the proper way to cancel with the cure notice. Or if they don't, then you could just send a letter over, just written up, as per the cure notice and this breach. Buyer elects to cancel. Again, conversation with the client. It's best if they sign that letter, it's sent to the title company and to the other agent there. Include title company on everything so that they know what's going on too. But you're going to have to physically do a cancellation, So I've seen it before where they cancel or they send a cure notice over for buyer failed to deliver unfulfilled loan contingency notice. And now they're a week past close of escrow. And then a buyer delivers an unfulfilled loan contingency notice. Well, even though they're past their 3 days, the buyer can still cancel and get their earnest money back because the other party never initiated a cancellation. So they beat them to the punch in a
Yeah,
way.
and they think it's automatic, and it's not.
It's not. And that's a good thing to bring up, is that a lot of agents think that it's an automatic cancellation after 3 days. And I hear that all the time. Well, I don't want to send a cure because I don't want to cancel the deal. And it's really not about canceling the deal. It's about giving notice that you might. There's a potential breach. Here's a friendly reminder, and we might cancel if you don't take care of this. That's really what a cure notice is.
So now somebody's been found in breach because the cure notice has expired. And what happens with the earnest money and the cancellation, and who makes the decision to take the earnest money based on paragraph 7B?
Okay, so we've initiated the cure notice. We're past the 3 days, and now we need to make a decision on, are we going to cancel, we're going to move forward, where we're going to go from this
The
point.
seller, yeah.
So the agent has to go to the client and explain all the pros and cons and all their options on where this goes for, do we want to cancel at this time? Do we want to let it ride? It's very common to do this after close of escrow when we're waiting for loan docs to get there and they're days away from closing. But they really need to make a decision on where they want to initiate the cancellation and the time of the contract, and what they're going to do if they initiate that cancellation is, what are we going to do with the earnest money? Are we going to take the earnest money? Is that going to be our sole and separate damages, or are we going to give the earnest money back to the buyer and then pursue the buyer for legal recourses on it?
So you're saying that if the seller takes the earnest money, that's it?
I am, because that's what the contract says.
So they can't pursue the buyer for any kind of damages at that point?
Not that I know of. You know, that's part of the contract. That's agreement that they make in there, that when they take that earnest money from the buyer on a breach, that's their sole and separate damages.
Interesting.